Hello, friend. Don't look behind you while I'm telling you a story. Story 1. There are things that disguise themselves as people just to blend into the festival, and only on Halloween night. When all spirits are allowed to walk, do you realize you're the one who's been blended in? I once worked as a temp sales clerk at a small Halloween costume store in a Midwestern town. It opened for the month of October, then vanished after the 31st like it never existed. It wasn't part of any major brand or chain. The shop always hired seasonal workers. College kids, the unemployed, whoever showed up early enough got the job. No interviews, no background checks. I needed money that year, so I applied and was told to start on October 5th. The store was set up inside an old building that used to be a funeral home, abandoned for decades. The owner was a short, dark-skinned man who introduced himself as Claude. He never smiled, never looked anyone in the eye for more than 3 seconds. I figured he was just one of those socially awkward types, common in seasonal retail. I worked the evening shift from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. My job was pretty simple: restock costumes, clean the shelves, and help customers try things on in the changing rooms at the back. At first, nothing seemed strange. Until the night of October 10th. I remember it clearly. A kid, maybe 7 years old, wandered into the store. He wasn't crying, didn't call for his parents, just stood there in the aisle, his face painted, white like a wax mask. I asked him who he came with. He didn't answer. He just raised one hand and pointed toward the dark corner of the store. I didn't see anyone. I brought him to the register and called mall security. But as soon as I turned my back, the boy was gone. Claude didn't seem too concerned. All he asked was, did he touch any merchandise? Like he was more worried the kid might have dirtied something after that night. I started noticing things. Every time I closed up, there'd be a few extra costumes that weren't on the inventory list. Outfits nobody bought. No tags, no brand. Looking like ceremonial garments from centuries past. Deep brown fabric, lace trims, or made from materials I couldn't even name. By morning, they'd be gone again. No one saw who took them. One night, around mid-October, a middle-aged woman walked in wearing a full morning gown that touched the floor, her neck wrapped in a black scarf like something out of Victorian times. She didn't say a word, just walked straight to the changing rooms without picking anything from the racks. I never heard the door open, never saw her footsteps. But by the time I got close, the dressing room was locked tight. At the end of my shift, I knocked. No answer. I used the backup key to open it. The room was empty. I started asking Claude about these people. He only replied once. They come to try things on, not to buy. Then he walked into the storage room and locked the door behind him. I decided to quit. But Claude said if I left before Halloween night, I wouldn't get a dime. I needed that money for rent, so I stayed. On October 30th, a group of 6 people came in, each in bizarre costumes. One had their face smeared with ash, hair draped over their eyes. One wore a rusted medieval suit of armor. Another had a stitched leather mask covering his face. The remaining 3 had their heads fully wrapped in cloth. No faces visible. I didn't hear them speak. They didn't move like people, but they all headed into the changing rooms, one by one. No one came back out. I asked Claude if he thought anything was off. He simply said, "We rent out bodies. They're seeing if it fits." I didn't understand. What did he mean? That night, Claude closed the store earlier than usual. He told me to take the night off and come back on Halloween. The shop would open later than normal. I never returned. I couldn't sleep that night. Not out of fear, but because I wasn't sure if I was still fully conscious. The shop didn't seem to follow the rules of the real world anymore. I felt like I'd been pulled into some kind of role-playing ritual I hadn't signed up for. Then the messages started coming in from Claude. He didn't ask where I was. He just sent photos of the strange costumes I'd seen, hanging. In perfect rows, a photo of me standing in front of the dressing room mirror. I don't remember ever taking it. And then one final message. You were a good fit. We'll hold on to you until midnight. I deleted every message. Turned off my phone. On October 31st, I didn't leave my apartment. I locked the doors, pulled the curtains, and sat in the corner of my room with a kitchen knife in hand. Just to feel like I still had control over something. At exactly midnight, the power went out. The entire block went dark, and in the bathroom mirror, I saw myself standing. Still. I was sitting on the floor, but my reflection was upright. I saw clearly what I was wearing. A long coat, high collar, ribbon cuffs, like the wax mannequins. In some dusty old museum, I smashed the mirror, but it wasn't until the lights came back on that I realized the blood on my hand wasn't mine. It was cold, thick, and smelled like melted candle wax. I don't know if I'm still me. 3 days later, the Halloween store was cleared out. The storefront stood empty again, just like every year, but something was different. No one remembered the owner named Claude. I visited every nearby mall. No one remembered the store ever existing. No rental records. No one ever saw Claude enter or leave the building. I am still alive, or I think I am. But since that night, whenever I look into the mirror, I never see my eyes blink at the same. Time as a reflection. I'm waiting for next Halloween to see if I return to that store or if something that fits better does. Asterisk. I tried living as if it had all just been a neurological episode. I moved to a new place, cut contact with anyone who had ever known me. But the more I tried to live like a normal person, the more I felt my presence thinning out. I lost my sense of time. My body clock no longer aligned with sunlight. Some days, I'd sleep from afternoon to night, wake at dawn, but still feel like I'd never slept. Sometimes I'd be standing in the street and suddenly find myself back in a dressing room. Even though I'd never returned there, I rented a small unit on the 3rd floor of an old apartment block in Cleveland. The landlord said it used to be a military clinic. The hallway curved unnaturally, and every room looked identical, like carbon copies. Once, I mistakenly entered room 308, which was supposed to be mine, only to find a woman lying motionless on the bed. She wasn't breathing, didn't move, but her eyes were open. I stepped back, shut the door, then looked at the room number. It said 307. Room 308 no longer existed. In its place was just a smooth, unbroken white wall. I started dreaming every night. But they weren't dreams, because I could feel the temperature, smell the dust, sense the chill of fabric brushing against my skin. In the dream, I was inside an old Halloween store, now decayed and abandoned. Decorations rotted. Light strings dangling from the ceiling. Broken tiles. Thick layers of dust. There was a large mirror in the center. I didn't walk toward it. I was pulled. In the reflection, I saw the people who had once entered the dressing rooms and never came out. They stood behind me, but whenever I turned around, no one was there. I saw myself again in that same Halloween outfit. A high-collared coat, black leather gloves. But the skin underneath wasn't human anymore. It was smooth, cold, unbreathing. Claude appeared, standing in the center of the store, holding a clipboard. He read names one by one. When he reached mine, I felt my throat tighten, like it was being strangled from the inside. I woke up gasping, but Claude's shadow was still drifting across the bathroom mirror. I locked myself in my room. I didn't eat, didn't sleep. I tried to write everything I could remember, as a way to anchor myself. But the more I wrote, the more my handwriting turned into symbols I couldn't understand. Twisted spirals, like inverted palm lines. On October 28th of that year, I found a flyer taped to my door. No one saw who left it. It read, "Now hiring? Dressing room attendance. 1 night only. Cash. No ID needed. No address. Just an arrow." And the words, "Lower storage wing, Beacon Mall basement." I shouldn't have gone. But I did. I told myself I needed closure to prove it was all just a prolonged hallucination. That the store was a stress-induced delusion. I entered the Beacon Mall basement at 9 p.m. on Halloween night. No security. Door left ajar. The lights flickering like no one had maintained them for years. And the store was still there. No signboard. No posters. but the lights were on. Costumes hung along the aisles. Mirrors lined every wall, reflecting. Endlessly, Claude stood behind the counter, wearing the exact same outfit from the first day I met him. He hadn't aged. Not a single detail had changed. I didn't sign up for this, I said, my voice trembling. You were held over from last year. Tonight's your shift, Claude replied, handing me a leather-bound book. On the cover, in faded letters, it read, Temporary Registry. I opened the first page, saw my name. Next to it, tried on, awaiting allocation. Beneath that were dozens of other names, some crossed out, some marked worn, rejected, or no body fit. Claude didn't give instructions. He just vanished into the stockroom, leaving me alone to shop. I sat and waited. The clock struck 10. The first customer entered, a little girl of indeterminate age, hair braided in twin pigtails, face veiled in mesh. She walked straight to aisle 3, picked up an old yellowing fairy tale gown, and went into the dressing room. 10 minutes later, she came out, but it wasn't her. Her posture had changed. Her eyes were different. Even the way she spoke had, aged by at least 30 years. She bowed politely to me and said, "This fits perfectly. Thank you." I wanted to scream, but my throat wouldn't open. One by one, they entered. None spoke. Each chose a costume as if it had once belonged to them. They entered the dressing rooms and came out in different bodies. No one looked the same, but all of them were empty. Like the soul inside was just mouthing lines from an ancient script, worn and tired dot near midnight. I saw myself walk. And that not me now. Me from a year ago, thinner, eyes still intact, still clinging to hope dot. I stood behind the counter, watching myself head to the rack, choose the same old outfit, and walk into the dressing room. I didn't dare stop it. Something inside me was locked. Claude returned at 11:59. He held an ink-dipped quill and crossed my name off the list. "Thank you," he said. "Next year, you'll be in charge of display. Make sure the costumes don't get mixed with those of the living." I don't clearly remember what happened after that. I only know that when I woke up or came to, I was standing inside a new store, fully stocked with costumes. But the lights were bluish and the air thick, like stagnant. Lake water. I saw myself in the mirror. Still me, but my skin no longer reflected light. My eyes no longer moved. I smiled, but the reflection didn't. I'm still here. Not hungry. Not tired, just waiting for the next Halloween, when the doors open again, and someone walks in, believing this is just another seasonal job. Story 2. Everyone wears masks on Halloween, but I was the only one who noticed that some masks can't be taken off. I used to work part-time as a teaching assistant for a special needs class, children with language and behavioral disabilities. At an elementary school in a western suburb of Colorado, there were 6 students in the class, aged 7 to 9. Each child had their own way of expressing themselves, difficult to interpret, difficult to teach, and almost impossible to communicate with. Most teachers avoided taking this class due to how complex the students' profiles were. But I didn't mind. I had just graduated. I needed the experience, the paycheck, and the sense that I was helping someone. That Halloween, the principal announced a small school-wide parade. Students would be allowed to dress up in costumes and collect candy from other classrooms. I thought it was a great opportunity, a way for the kids to feel included and have fun. But Miss Brown, the head teacher of the class, objected. She said, "Some of the kids in this class don't understand the concept of pretend." I thought she was joking. But later, I understood. I was in charge of preparing masks for the children, soft ones, with elastic straps, featuring simple animal designs, like foxes, bears, and cats. I let the kids choose whichever they liked, then brought them home to adjust them to fit each child's face, while getting the masks printed on softer material at a local print shop. I ran into a problem. One of the fox designs got corrupted. The printer malfunctioned and the image was distorted. The eyes were too long, and the mouth was sharp like real teeth. I almost threw it out, but something in me thought kids like weird things. So I kept it. On the morning of October 31st, I brought the masks to class. Each kid picked one, except for Eli. He was always the quietest. Never spoke, just sat and drew circles all day. But that morning he walked straight up to the warped fox mask and put it on without any help. And then he smiled. It was the first time I had ever seen him smile. No one in class had seen Eli smile before. Miss Brown gave me a strange look, skeptical, but said nothing. The parade started at 10 a.m. The whole school gathered in the hallways, each class, taking turns walking past one another to hand out and receive candy. I followed behind our group, watching the kids enjoy themselves, except Eli. He didn't ask for candy, didn't say a word. He just trailed behind the group, head slightly tilted, the eyes of the mask seeming to track something no one else could see. A chill ran down my spine. Back in the classroom, Eli still refused to take off the mask. I gently suggested, "Let's take it off so you can eat candy more easily, Eli." He shook his head. I stepped forward to remove it for him. But the moment my hand touched the mask, he grabbed my wrist tightly. So tight it hurt. It was fast. Then he let go. No one else saw. I looked into his eyes through the mask's slits. And in that moment, I knew whatever was behind that fox face, it wasn't Eli anymore. That afternoon, I overheard Miss Brown talking on the phone in the prep room, got double quotes. No, I can't say for sure. But I have a feeling that child is not Eli. I eavesdropped, but didn't confront her. Because I felt the same gut, I went home and dug out the original fox mask template. On the back, I saw a strange marking, not a letter, not a number, but as if someone had drawn a spiral symbol with their fingertip, scratched faintly into the paper. I didn't remember adding that mark. That night, I dreamed of Eli standing alone in the empty schoolyard. No lights, no one else, just him and me. But he wasn't wearing the mask. His face was the fox, not a costume, not makeup. A real muzzle with red fur and black bottomless eyes. He smiled, too wide for a human mouth. Then he spoke in a voice too deep for his age. I fit the shape. Don't switch me back. I woke up drenched in cold sweat. On November 1st, one student was absent. Eli didn't come to school. Ms. Brown told me to watch the class while she called his parents. 30 minutes later, she came back pale-faced. Eli's family moved out, she said, last night. Didn't tell anyone? I didn't believe it. I tried calling the emergency contact number listed for his parents. This number does not exist. I reported it to the school administration. They checked the records. Eli's name wasn't in the official student registry. I opened the handwritten student list I kept in my notebook. His name had been crossed out in red ink. No one in class remembered what Eli looked like. Not even me. I found the group photo we'd taken during the Halloween parade. In the spot where Eli had stood, there was just a blurry smudge, like the image had failed to render properly. But I remembered him standing there near the window, the fox mask, facing the camera. I zoomed in. Behind the glass window, outside, there was another child wearing a mask. Same shape, same design, watching us from the other side. I never told anyone about this, but I kept the mask. I don't know why I didn't throw it away. A month later, while cleaning out my closet, I found the mask hanging on the inside doorknob, even though I clearly remembered sealing it in a box and hiding it under my bed. The mask was still intact, except for one thing. The inner lining had fresh scratch marks, like fingernails had clawed from the inside, trying to push out asterisk. After that night, I locked the mask away in a combination cabinet. I still remember the code, 1986, the year my mother was born. I even placed salt packets in both corners of the cabinet. It wasn't something I usually did, nor did I believe in that sort of thing. But in that moment, logic was no longer useful. In the nights that followed, I started hearing a rustling sound in my room around 3 a.m. I couldn't tell where it came from. It wasn't a loud noise, just a faint, persistent movement, like someone scratching at fabric or crawling through narrow spaces. every time I turned on the light. It stopped. I lived alone on the 4th floor. The windows were always shut. I didn't keep pets, and there was no clutter outside my field of vision. I tried not to think about Eli anymore. But the more I avoided it, the more details started surfacing, like how, during all the time he'd been in the class, no one had ever actually touched him. Not because he pulled away, but because his body always seemed out of sync, like it existed in a different frame of time. A week after the Halloween parade, I was reassigned to a different class. I didn't protest, but I still walked past the old room every day. It had been turned into a storage space. No more children's voices. Each time I passed, I felt like someone was standing just inside, close to the door, watching through the narrow window pane. I never looked directly in Dot around mid-November. I suddenly came down with a high fever. It wasn't the flu, no usual symptoms. Just my skin began drying out and forming rough patches, like tree bark. The doctor said it was stress-related. Gave me a topical cream and told me to rest. I stayed home for 3 days. On the 4th morning, when I opened the cabinet to get a shirt, I found the combination lock broken, the crack split right across the 8. In 1986, the mask was gone. I searched the whole apartment, under the pillow, under the sofa. Behind the curtains, nothing, but that evening, as I stood brushing my teeth in front of the mirror, I saw myself wearing it. I flinched and reached for my face. Nothing was there. My skin was bare. But in the reflection, the fox mask was still. Eyes pitch black, unmoving. A smile too sharp, slicing from cheek to cheek. I can't remember if I finished brushing my teeth. I only remember standing there for nearly 15 minutes, eyes locked on the mirror, because I knew if I turned away, whatever was in there might come out. I threw a towel over the mirror. The next morning, the towel was folded neatly on the floor. Clean Dot in the 3rd week. I quit my job. No explanation. No resignation letter. I just couldn't step onto school grounds anymore. Every time I stood at the gate, I saw a child in the far corner of the yard, facing away. I couldn't see their face, but their slanted posture felt painfully familiar. I blinked. They vanished. Went to stay with my mother in Littleton, hoping a change of environment would help me sleep. But on the first night, I felt someone sitting on the edge of my bed at 2 a.m. I didn't dare turn around. I stayed still, barely breathing, trying to convince myself it was sleep paralysis. But then I felt a hand gently grasp mine. The hand was so cold it numbed my skin. And that voice right next to my ear. See? It fits perfectly. I told my mother. She held me, but said nothing. The next morning, she handed me a small wooden box. Inside were several old paper masks she'd kept from when I was a child. She used to work at a folk museum for a short time. Among the pile, I saw one identical to Eli's, long eyes, sharp mouth, scratches on the inner lining. I asked where she got it. She hesitated for a moment, then said, back when I worked in the archives, there was a batch of masks returned. No one knew where they came from. Some staff said they were once used in soul-binding rituals by a migrant community that no longer exists. The masks were painted to trap spirits inside. I kept one because it looked like your face when you were born. I asked, did I ever wear it? She didn't answer. I took the box and returned to my old apartment to look for any trace of what had happened. But when I arrived, the place had been completely cleared out, as if no one had ever lived there. The building manager said that unit had been vacant for over 6 months. No current tenants. I pulled out my phone to call my old number, but my phone now only had one image in the gallery, a photo of the Halloween class party. The blurry spot in the picture was still there. But this time, the haze was slowly clearing. I could now make out Eli's silhouette, and next to him, me. Also wearing the fox mask. Asterisk, I no longer know what to call myself. A witness. A survivor, or just a leftover fragment from a ritual. I didn't. Even though I was part of the photo on my phone kept changing. Even when I didn't open the camera app. Even when it was in airplane mode. Even when I tried to delete it, the image always returned, clearer each time, and each time I was standing closer to Eli in the frame. In the latest version, I could clearly see my hand resting on his shoulder. We were both wearing masks. I began to wonder, had I truly been the one to see Eli first? Or was I just the next one line? I went back to the print shop where I'd made the mask last year. No one remembered me. The owner said he had never taken any orders from a school. When I asked about the stack of paper we'd used, he said, there was this pile of old stock left in the storage room. Weird-sized sheets, smelled like pine resin. I burned it, couldn't use it. The ink wouldn't stick. The images always faded with time. I returned to the old school. The classroom I once worked in had been permanently locked. No nameplate, no light. I had tried calling Ms. Brown, the only person who could confirm Eli ever existed. But when I dialed her number, an automated voice replied, "This number is no longer in service. If you're looking for Ms. Brown, please contact the district office." I did. The staff member asked, "Which Brown? From which school?" "Eastridge Elementary, special language support class." A pause. Then, "Eastridge closed down in 2019. Structural collapse. No such class ever existed." I hung up, but I still remembered the sound the mask made as it tapped against the wooden desk, the look in Eli's eyes behind the fox face, and that cold grip on my wrist that made me shiver. I began drawing what I remembered, every detail of the mask. Its edges, the repeating symbols from my dreams. I pinned the sketches across my walls, hoping to find a pattern, but something strange began to happen. Each morning, the drawings looked slightly different. I couldn't tell if someone had changed them. The mask in the sketches began to open. Its mouth, then its eyes. And on the third attempt at drawing Eli, I noticed a small hand resting on my shoulder. Not from memory, but appearing directly on the blank page. One foggy night, I woke to the sound of wind chimes. Go ahead. Never owned any. The windows were closed. But inside my house, there was wind. I stepped into the living room. All the drawings had fallen to the floor, stacked over each other like puzzle pieces. At the center was the fox mask, not a print, not a sketch. The real thing. I had no memory of bringing it back. I didn't want to believe I'd kept it. But there it was, exact same shape, same scratches, and this time, dried blood on the inside. I don't know why. I knelt down and reached for it. Touching it was like placing my hand on stone that had been submerged in cold water for years. My fingers trembled, not from fear, but from an odd sense of familiarity. It fit, like something that had always belonged to me. I picked it up and examined it. My eyes reflected on the curve of its surface, and behind me in the glass, a child stood, motionless, faceless, but on its head was a copy of the mask in my hand. I turned nothing. When I faced the mirror again, the child was at my shoulder. And this time, I was the one wearing the mask. I stumbled back, but I couldn't take it off. My hands empty. My face, heavy, itching, smothered. I screamed, but no sound came out. My mouth moved, but the voice that emerged belonged to someone else. I hit the table, fell to the floor. When I opened my eyes, I was standing outside my apartment door. It was morning. My neighbor waved as if nothing was wrong. "You just moved in. Your kid is adorable." I didn't reply, but I heard laughter echoing from inside my apartment. A child's laughter, high, even, measured. Now I'm no longer sure who lives there anymore. Every time I walk past a mirror, time slows. I see children in masks, dozens, hundreds, standing still, waiting for their turn. And the one handing out the masks. I've started dreaming with memories that aren't mine. I see myself in school, drawing circles, saying nothing. I see a young assistant bringing in the fox mask, and I step forward to wear it, as I've done many times before. I wake with a small handprint pressed into the skin of my abdomen. I don't think I'm the one telling this story. I think I'm just a vessel, a memory left behind, so someone else can keep rewriting what already happened. If you've read this far, you might be the next. Just remember this, not everyone wears a mask to hide something. Sometimes they're trying to keep something from getting out. Eli didn't disappear. He just needed someone to hold a face for him. And every year, someone always fits. Story 3. Not every house is built to be lived in. Some exist only to hold on to what once lived inside. I'm a freelance sound engineer. Most of my work involves setting up temporary audio systems for small events in rural areas. It's not stable, but it pays the bills. And I've grown to like the solitude, especially after my divorce 2 years ago. Late last October, I got a strange gig from a group of young artists based in northern Wyoming. They hired me to install a sound system for an experimental performance to celebrate Halloween, an immersive installation with sound and lighting effects. The venue, an abandoned house in the middle of a field. They called it House No. 9. They paid 50% upfront and sent over a very simple setup plan. A few multi-directional cardioid microphones, an infrasound recorder, and 4 speakers scattered around the house to create moving audio effects. They didn't ask for much, only that everything be installed on October 30th, so they could set up props and staging on Halloween Day. I asked for a specific address. They didn't give me one. They only sent GPS coordinates and said, "You'll see a wooden sign with the number 9. Go on the right day, at the right time. If you're early or late, you won't find it." I don't believe in superstitions, so I didn't think much of it. I arrived late in the afternoon on October 30th, exactly as instructed. The area was as desolate as any place in the prairie. But just like they said, when I reached the coordinates, a house appeared on the horizon. 2 stories tall, faded gray wood, peeling paint. Out front, an old wooden sign, the words barely legible. No, 9. This house is full. I figured it was part of the artistic concept. The door wasn't locked. No one was inside. No electricity, but the last light of the day was enough to reveal the rotting interior. Warped floorboards, as if soaked for years. The air smelled faintly of ash and damp earth. I started installing the equipment. While setting up the infrasound mic on the ground floor, I noticed something odd. The mic kept picking up signals. Even though the house was dead silent, I thought maybe there was some background electronic noise. But the entire house had no power. I pulled the battery. The signal was still there. I couldn't explain it. But I kept working. Around 7 p.m., I heard a car pull up outside. I went to check. It was an old SUV. A thin girl stepped out, black hair, white hoodie, carrying a canvas bag. No one else got out. She introduced herself as Ren, representing the artist group. She said the others would arrive later, but asked me to test the system in the meantime. We turned it on. The speakers worked fine. Despite the small space, the surround sound gave the strange impression that the audio was moving from wall to ceiling, then vanishing. I joked, "Seems like the house is cooperating." Ren didn't smile. She stared at me for a moment, then asked something that gave me chills. "Did you record the infrasound?" I nodded. She said, "Did you ever listen back to it?" "Only do it during the day." I gave a nervous laugh, thinking she was staying in character. That night, I slept in my car out front. The wind was biting. The land around me, eerily still. Around 2 a.m., I heard something. A deep, steady hum, like a growl coming from beneath the ground. I shot upright, looked around. Nothing. The house stood there, dark and still, as if no one had ever been inside. I opened my laptop, checked the infrasound recordings. In the last 10 minutes, there was a dense wave of signal, rising, intensifying, then suddenly dropping off. I boosted the audio, filtered the static, and something came through. Not a growl. Voices, not one, many. All whispering the same phrase over and over, in perfect sync. "We haven't left, we haven't left, we haven't left, ... The next morning, I planned to pack up early and get the hell out. But when I looked toward the house, I saw Ren standing on the roof, completely still. No ladder, no possible way up from the outside. I shouted. She didn't respond. I rushed in. The stairs to the second floor were rotten, but still climbable. But when I reached the roof, no one. I went back outside. The roof was empty. Ren was gone. The SUV had vanished too. I stood there, confused. Just as I was about to pack up, I saw movement at a second floor window. A thin figure in a white hoodie. I couldn't bring myself to go back inside. I drove off, took the recordings home, and checked them one last time before sending them off. But when I opened the laptop, there was a new audio file I hadn't created. The file was named _roomtone_lastdoor.wav. I played it. Same whispering voices. But this time, a new voice cut through, louder, clearer, at the very end. You opened the door. So now you'll hold it for us. I haven't taken any jobs since, but some nights, even with the laptop turned off, I hear faint sounds coming from it. I even removed the battery. Nothing changed. I once shared the audio file with a friend who specializes in acoustic analysis. 3 days later, he called me. That's not a human voice. I mean, frequency, timbre, the way the sound is produced, it doesn't match any known vocal system. But it's still ... speaking. It might be something that's learned to imitate. US, asterisk, I deleted that strange .wav file from my computer. I erased the history, wiped the storage, removed the hard drive, and threw it out. But a few nights later, when I booted up a new machine, something still came through the external speakers. A breath, slow and steady, like someone was lying right beside your ear, eyes open all night. I unplugged everything, powered off the system, and slammed the laptop shut. The sound stopped. But a few seconds later, I heard a whisper from the wall behind me. There's still one door left open. I searched for Ren, or at least the name. Digging through old emails, there was only one contact. ren-9@postmail.cc. I sent a message asking about house no. 9. About the audio file, about the voice. No reply. I traced the originating IP. It ended at a signal relay station near Colorado Springs. No pinpoint location. I posted a summary of the incident on an acoustic engineering forum, framing it as a piece of fiction. One included some infrasound data I still remembered. A user named W019 replied with a single sentence. You went into the wrong house. It's not 9. It's the last one still standing. I couldn't sleep for weeks. When I did, I didn't dream, but I kept hearing wood bending under pressure, wind scraping through cracks, and the sound of someone tapping lightly from inside my wall. I live on the 7th floor of an apartment complex. There are no hollow walls, no wiring through the bedroom, but I still hear it. One night, when I couldn't take it anymore, I shot up in bed. For the first time, I heard the voice with my actual ears, not just through audio waves. We haven't left. You haven't come back. I started dreaming about the final door in that house, the basement door. When I worked inside house no. 9, I saw it locked tight. I hadn't paid attention. Now. It's the only thing I see in dreams. A black painted door. Old wooden frame and etched into its surface. A symbol that looks like an inverted speaker. Or maybe a stitched shut mouth. I decided to go back. Not out of curiosity, but because something inside me was pulling me there. Like I'd left part of my body or memory inside that house, and it was now growing roots. I brought a basic field recorder, no infrasound gear. I arrived at the same coordinates, exactly at sunset, on October 30th. There was nothing there. Just a stretch of empty land, grass up to my knees, the wind blowing, and emptiness. No wooden sign, no house, nothing that had ever been there. I backed my car away, thinking maybe I was in the wrong spot. But before leaving, I turned on the mic, a last hopeless attempt. The signal light lit up instantly, and from the speakers came this repeated phrase, "The basement door is still open. You're standing right above it." I shut the recorder off, placed it on the ground, and the ground shivered beneath it. For a few seconds, as if something was breathing just under the dry soil. A few days later, the acoustics friend I had sent the .w file to came looking for me. He looked haggard, sleep-deprived. He asked me, "Do you still remember the last sound in that file?" I nodded. He handed me a piece of equipment, something like a whisper decoder, designed to extract sub-layered voices from old archival recordings. We loaded the original file into it, beneath the main whispers. We haven't left. There was another lower track. A voice, my own, repeating. I opened the door. I let them out. I let them out, ... I don't remember ever saying that. My friend stared at me. Voice dry. Maybe they recorded you. Played it back later. Like something learning to speak. Using your voice. Like they needed a mold. I don't open any sound equipment anymore. But one day, I was sitting in a cafe, no headphones, no recording tools, when the background music suddenly shifted. The track playing was the same. Sound mix I had prepared for House No 9. I asked the staff, "Where's this music from?" She replied, "Just an auto playlist, but this one's not in the library." I left the cafe. A few nights later, the knocking in the walls came back. But this time, it was nails scratching across rotting wood, and something that had just learned how to form a new sentence. Spoke softly. You came back. "Don't leave again. We miss your voice." Now I see myself in mirrors, but not the version I recognize. It's the me from House No 9, holding the mic, wearing headphones. And behind me there are shapes without form, thick like compressed sound, trying to push through. Now I understand. I didn't just record that house. I opened a channel, a transmission path, and I'm the only one who matches its frequency. House No 9 was never a place. It was a bandwidth, a type of sound house, something that only appears to those with the right voice. And now I'm losing mine. Not from sore throat, not from damage. I just can't pronounce certain words anymore. As if someone or something is slowly erasing my access to my own voice, saving it for another purpose. Asterisk, I lost my voice completely on the morning of November 1 SD. No pain, no inflammation, no physical symptoms. I woke up, opened my mouth, and only air escaped. A soft breath, like something held back for far too long. No doctor could explain it. They called it functional vocal paralysis, but I knew that wasn't the real cause, because every night, when everything else went silent, I could still hear myself speaking from somewhere inside the house. I live alone. No recording devices, no TV, no speakers. But my voice, my real voice, round and clear, still echoed from the walls, from the cracks under doors, from the darkness beneath the table, from the bathroom as water ran. I'm still here. Don't. Shut it off. They need the signal. I tried to leave. I took a train to another state, rented a temporary room in a mountain town in Wyoming. No internet, no cell signal. I swore to myself I'd never touch another sound device again. No recording, no playback, no headphones. The first week was peaceful. Then one morning, I woke up and found my laptop sitting on the table. Recording software open, despite me remembering clearly that I had locked it in my bag. The file was named reconnect.w, hands trembling. I played it. My voice, not whispering this time, but speaking normally, as if having a conversation with someone who didn't speak, just responded with offbeat silences. But I heard every line in my own tone, my own cadence. They figured out how to keep the frequency. Anyone who listens will be open. Now I just need one more person with the same voice. I deleted the file immediately. The light bulb in the room flickered and then began to replay the audio, somehow replicating my voice through pulses of light. As if the light itself was speaking, I unscrewed the bulb, pulled out every cord. That night, I sat in a dark room, ears plugged, but the sound no longer came from outside. It came from inside my head. Not a thought, not a hallucination. A real sound, emitted by a false vocal cord, shaped inside me, a duplicate that had already taken root in my body. I began remembering conversations that never happened, or at least not in this world. I saw myself standing inside house now. 9 not with Ren, but with someone else. A hazy figure, like smoke. But with a voice that sounded exactly like mine. We were wiring mics, calibrating the infrasound rig, and some version of me asked, "What if the signal stays open after we leave the house?" The other replied, "Then the house follows the signal." What goes first is sound, not structure. I understood. I wasn't haunted. I was the relay station. House. No, 9 was never bound to one set of coordinates. It appears wherever a compatible frequency is broadcast, and I carry that frequency inside me. That means wherever I go, as long as I speak or someone mimics my voice, the house will begin to reconstruct itself in that place. And then I started noticing the signs. The wooden sign with faded letters. No, 9. This house is full. Appeared outside a cafe I'd only visited once. It showed up beneath the old address sign at my parents' home. It even appeared in the dream of the audio engineer who once processed the file for me. He drilled out his own hearing to stop catching my voice in the wind. Now, I live like a mute in a world of endless signals. But I know silence isn't enough, because yesterday, a teenager walked past me on the street wearing headphones. As he passed, I caught a faint sound leaking from them. It wasn't music. It was the background loop I recorded last year. I turned. He turned too and smiled faintly. His voice was eerily like mine, and I understood. House, no, 9 isn't just borrowing my voice to transmit the signal. It's now teaching others to speak with it, to replicate the house, to open more doors. I have to write this down, everything. To send to anyone who's ever worked in sound, ever used a mic, ever recorded anything linked to house, no. 9. If you're listening to a file you don't remember recording. If you find a clip with your voice whispering, if you hear yourself in a place you've never been, stop speaking. Don't respond. Don't engage, because you might have been chosen to hold the voice for the next house. Story 4. The children who laugh in old photos all have one thing in common. No one remembers who they are. I work as an archival technician at a historical digitization center in New Mexico, a place dedicated to preserving images and documents from ghost towns and settlements long vanished. Most of my job involves scanning old photos, tagging and categorizing them, and uploading them to a cloud database. It's dull, solitary work, but I enjoy the hours of silence, staring into photographs now. One else looks at One of our end-of-year projects was to process an unmarked box of negatives sent by an anonymous man. No return address, just a single handwritten line in red ink. Orphan Run, October 71. I figured it was the name of an old orphanage. The writing was thick and strange, like it had been drawn with a pen that had no tip. I opened the box. Inside were over 200 frames of 35mm negatives, most of them moldy or blurred, but some were still intact. I loaded each roll into the manual scanner. From the very first image, I knew something was wrong. The first photo was black and white, an old playground, overgrown grass, a tilted swing. But in the center stood a child, face obscured, wearing a hood. I tried adjusting the brightness and contrast, but the face never came into view, as if the light at the moment it was taken had refused to touch it. I assumed it was a film error. The second image showed a dormitory-style bedroom iron. Beds, peeling walls. 5 children lay asleep. But if you look closely, one of them had no shadow. I double-checked. The picture had been taken with a flashlight source from the right, so the shadow should fall left. 4 of them did. One didn't. Under there. Bed was a flat, perfect void. The third photo showed a Halloween party in a common room. Children stood in rows, wearing classic paper masks, pumpkins, witches. But in the corner of the frame, behind a curtain, stood an adult. No costume. No lighting on their face. But I could tell they were staring directly into the camera. When I zoomed in, their face began to distort. Not from a technical glitch, the image itself was fading. Pixel by pixel, as I stared at a still photo, I uploaded the scans to the main server, saved under a folder called OR71_raw. Plan to clean them later, But that night, as I got home, I received a strange message on my work phone. Don't let light touch the ones without faces. They'll see themselves. No sender. Just a question mark where the contact name should be. I thought someone was messing with me, but around midnight, my room lights flickered, then shut off completely. My computer screen turned on. I hadn't touched it, and it wasn't connected to the internet or even on sleep mode. It displayed a single image, the Halloween party from earlier. But this time, it shook slightly, like something inside the photo was trying to move past the frame. The next morning, back at the center, the archive server was down. The folder OR71_raw was gone. I asked IT. They said the systems that I had auto-deleted. The scans after processing. The deletion log read, detected non-subject presence, memory artifact interference. I had never seen that warning before. It wasn't in any of our documentation. I checked the offline backup drive I'd used. The folder was still there, but every photo file had been converted into .mp4 video format. There was only one file. Now, you were in their .mp4, I played it. It was the Halloween image. But no longer static. The children began to move. Jerky. Slow. Like someone forcing a frozen film to play again. One by one, they turned to face me. Not in sync, not uniformly. And the last child in the row was wearing my face. I've never been in that photo. I was never there. But it had my face, my warped smile, my uneven eyelids, the exact way I looked in old passport photos. At the end of the video, it spoke. Not faintly, but whispered directly through my computer speaker. We need an adult to keep our names. Since then, I've had the same dream every night. I stand at the end of a long hallway, dim lights flickering. Children glide past me, heads bowed, lips moving as if singing a tuneless song. And with each child that passes, I forget a real memory. From my life, like I'm paying myself away, one memory at a time, in exchange for something they want to preserve. I tried reprinting the original photos, but the printer only outputs blank sheets. I emailed other archives for help, but anytime I attached an image, the server would cut the connection. I took a physical copy to a local photo shop. The owner, an old man who had been mute since childhood, looked at the image and pointed to the door, shaking his head violently. I asked why. He scribbled on a note, "I have seen that girl before. 1968, and my sister's wedding photo. But my sister never had children." One night, I woke up to the sound of printing. The Halloween photo was coming out of my home printer. I had never linked the printer to the scans. I had no print queue. I rushed over and yanked the paper out. The ink was still wet. Same party. Same kids. But now I was in the middle of the group. No mask. No disguise. I was the only adult in the photo. Asterisk, I tried printing the photo again the next morning. It didn't work. The image file was no longer on my hard drive, not on the server, not in any backup. And yet, the photo was still in my hand. The print from the night before, with my face in the middle of a group of children with no names. I turned it over multiple times, looked at it from every angle. In the bottom right corner, there was a faint smudge. When magnified under a loupe, I could just barely read. Photographer, name nitrogen monoxide, longer exists. The ink so fine it looked as though written with a single hair dipped in ink. That's when I began to realize I had become part of the collection. Not just the archivist, not just the observer. I was now one of the photographs. Strange things started happening at the center. One morning, the facial recognition, I auto-tagged each child in the photo series with names. Names that matched. Real missing persons records from the Midwest. Dated between 1967 and 1973. No one at the center had input those names manually. I checked the system logs. No external access, no signs of malware. But each photo that got tagged became brighter, clearer, unsettlingly sharp. As if every time a name was entered, the child in the image woke up. I decided to print out the entire series and store them separately. But on the first night I brought them home, I couldn't sleep. The room felt wrong, no sound. But I could feel my eyes being watched from two directions. One from the window, and one from the photographs themselves. At one point, I sat motionless in a chair, staring into the dark, and suddenly realized I was smiling, unintentionally, uncontrollably. A soft, dry smile. Like my facial muscles were remembering a gesture that didn't belong to me. The next morning, I checked the printed photos again. Some had changed the composition, not smudges, not fading, but actual alterations. In one image, a camera now sat in the middle of the room, pointed directly at me. In another, a child who had been seated at the far end of the table was now standing right behind me. No shadow, no face. But its shape was getting closer with every new print. I tried returning the photos to the center. But that day, the fingerprint scanner wouldn't recognize me. They said I was no longer on the employee list. My email account had been deactivated. My old office had been reassigned. No one remembered I ever worked there. My name had vanished from the entire system. I began to suspect maybe I never left the photo. I went to visit the old man who said he'd seen that girl in his sister's wedding photo. He lived in a small care facility by the river, about a 2-hour drive from Santa Fe. When I arrived, he had lost his voice, or perhaps no longer remembered how to speak. But when I held up the Halloween photo, his eyes widened, his hands trembled. Then he traced the image with one finger, pointing to the child at the far right. And then he pointed at me. I said, "I don't know who that is." He shook his head, took a pen, and scrawled shakily on a piece of paper. "No, that's not someone. That's the first photo." I froze. The first photo. If he was right, then maybe the entire series I was scanning wasn't made up of images of children who had lived, but rather images of things that had existed only as photographs, now reconstructing their past by taking new pictures. One night, I left my laptop webcam on. Around midnight, the screen flicked on. My photo editing software launched, and for a full minute, the machine took a picture of me through the webcam, then merged my face into the Halloween image. I hadn't touched anything. I hadn't given any command. I saw my face pasted onto the body of a child wearing a white rabbit. Mask, now unmasked, revealing my current face. No beard, no hair, but the eyes were an exact match. I dragged the file into the trash. An hour later, every image folder on my device had transformed into a single file. No name, no extension. Only the thumbnail remained, my face wearing the rabbit mask. I started doubting my own sense of time, ever since I saw the photo of myself wearing the white rabbit mask. Every morning I wake up, it takes me a few minutes to remember what day it is. The wall calendar in my home no longer matches the one on my phone. Daylight arrives late, ends early, as if time around me is skewing, like film being stretched while passing through an old scanner. I moved, burned all the printed photos, wiped my hard drive, destroyed my phone, cut all connections. But before I left, I did something I now believe was a mistake. I looked into the mirror to stare directly into my own eyes. For a split second, I didn't see my eyes move. The person in the mirror kept staring straight ahead even when I turned. My face, and then the reflection vanished. The mirror turned into a flat, gray-white surface, like undeveloped film dot in that surface. I saw a long hallway, dim lights. The child with the rabbit mask stood at the far end, waving. Behind it, empty picture frames were slowly surfacing from the wall. I don't dare sleep anymore, because now, every time I close my eyes, I don't dream. I hear the sound of a camera shutter. One click, then two, then three. Each time, a memory fades like a photo overexposed to too much light. I forgot my relatives' phone numbers. I forgot the name of the town where I was born. I forgot the sound of my own voice. Every time I try to remember, a sharp ache pulses in my head, followed by the sound of flipping photos. Shift. One day, in desperation, I sought out an elderly photographer who used to live in a place called Ghostville. The town I suspected was once known as Orphan Run. I found him through an old newspaper. He used to take photos for orphanages across the Midwest from the 50s to the 70s, when I mentioned the box of negatives with the red handwriting. He went silent for a long time. Then he said, "Do you know why no one remembers those kids?" Names? Because they weren't abandoned? They were made from the first photo. No one gave birth to them. No one adopted them. They only needed someone to take the picture. I asked, "And after the picture's taken?" He replied, "Then the photographer's memories become the only thing they need to keep existing." I asked if he had ever taken such a photo. He said, "I was the one who shot Orphan Run, Halloween, 71, 10 children." But when I developed the film, there were 11. The last one wore a rabbit mask, standing at the edge. I don't remember any kid like that being there, but it showed up in every print. Then my wife started forgetting my name. Then I stopped recognizing my own face. I had to stop. Had to hide all the negatives. I asked where he hid them. He looked at me, eyes cloudy, but resolute. "I sent them to you." I don't know if he was telling the truth, but after that day, he vanished. The care home said he left behind an empty room, keys on the table. No trace. I checked the box of negatives again. Beneath the liner, I found a small, separate strip of film, just a single frame. No one in it, only a white wall, and a doorway that opened into an empty hallway, shot from the exact perspective of where I'd been sitting while scanning the photos. Loaded the strip into the scanner. The screen displayed, "Face detected identical to user." I had never taken that photo, but I knew that's where I'm going to appear. I decided to go deeper one last time. I installed a specialized program, one that reconstructs 3D spaces from still photos using light data and artificial perspective. I fed in the entire Halloween sequence. The software recreated the room from the photo, rec room. Fluorescent bulbs, wooden floor. But after a few minutes, it automatically widened the camera view and added a door behind the photographer. I had never seen this door in any image. I clicked to rotate the virtual camera, and I saw a hallway stretching endlessly, with portraits hung on either wall. None of the faces had eyes. All had been hollowed out, except for the last one. It was me. No mask. Eyes open, mouth twisted into an uneven smile. I tried turning off the program. It wouldn't stop. The reconstruction kept running. A message appeared, repeating 3 times. "Your face hasn't been cut. We can still take you." I turned to the mirror, but the mirror was gone. Just a white photo frame, wooden border. Inside it was me, bending down, about to press the shutter. If you see yourself in a photo you don't remember being taken, don't try to find out who took it. It might be you. Maybe. From now on, it's your job. Story 5. Some places aren't abandoned. They're just waiting for someone to return at the right time. I used to work as an industrial environmental inspector, specializing in surveying lands formerly used for military or research purposes, to verify whether they qualified for civilian reuse. The job required constant travel, often into areas sealed off for decades. Once, I was assigned to an old missile testing complex near the Utah-Nevada border, referred to as Site 34, which had supposedly been dismantled in the early 80s. After an unexplained explosion. According to the files, this site had been a testing ground for something called reflected sound dispersion technology, a vague term that likely meant using sound waves to mimic or disrupt radar target imagery. The documentation claimed most of the underground facilities had been filled in. But when I arrived, one entrance to Test Shaft 3 remained partially uncovered. I went alone. The checkpoint had rotted away. No guards. It was late October, Halloween. I remember because I saw a rubber mask lying among melted wires, the distorted face of a human stretched into a scream. Though the emotion was unclear, Test Shaft 3 led down a long corridor, unlit, but strangely dry. I turned on my flashlight and began logging humidity levels and air toxicity. Nothing unusual, except one thing. The sound seemed to be pulled behind me. Each step I took made no echo from the walls. It was as if the reverb was being collected just behind my back. It felt like someone was recording me, though I couldn't spot any equipment. I continued deeper. At about 30 meters underground, I reached the final chamber, The steel door was ajar. Its faded label read, "Protocol room? Those who leave nitrogen monoxide trace." I'd never seen that term in any military archive. Inside was a circular space, cement walls. At the center stood a rotating metal chair mounted on a turntable. Around it were 12 mirrors, none of which reflected me, though my flashlight still cast light normally. I sat in a chair. The moment I spun once, I felt someone sit on. Knee-not collision, but the distinct sensation of human skin pressing against mine. Like someone was standing directly behind me, breathing steadily. But it wasn't breathing out of life, it was breathing out of imitation. I jumped up. Number 1 was there. But the mirrors began to reflect, not my current self, but a back-facing version of me. He stood with his back to me, face hidden, but his arms moved out of sync with mine. When I stood still, he reached out toward the glass. I ran, but when I turned back toward the entrance, the hallway was no longer straight. It curved slightly, as if someone had rearranged the structure while I was in that room. I walked for what felt like hours, and there were no stairs back to the surface. Only new warning signs, handwritten. Do not say your name out loud. Do not respond to your copy. Your sound is no longer yours. I began to suspect I wasn't in Site 34 anymore, but in a mirrored version of it, where sound and image no longer aligned with reality. Then my phone rang. No signal, no battery. But the screen showed an incoming internal call. 340034. I picked up. On the other end was my voice laughing. Not a real laugh. More like an exhale, twisted into static. A warped chuckle played on loop from an old cassette. Each repeat made my voice older, more distorted, then a message: don't return. To the surface doesn't remember anyone who left from here. Eventually, I found another metal door, unlabeled, taped shut with a faded warning strip. I broke the tape and opened it. Inside was an old recording room, dozens of analog monitors, all playing the same image. Me, sitting in the chair, staring into the camera, but my eyes had been replaced with black recesses. I stood there, frozen. The monitors began to desynchronize. In one screen, I stood up and stared into the lens. In another, I pulled the mic from the stand and swallowed it whole. In the last screen, I disappeared entirely. Only the chair remained, and outside the room, in real life, I heard a whisper. We hold space for those willing to leave, no echo. I don't remember how I got out. All I know is, when I opened my eyes, I was lying in the desert near the old checkpoint. No one found me for 3 days. I had temporary voice loss, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was my voice started playing from things that shouldn't make sound. One night, the radio in my car turned on, no station playing, but my voice came through. The entrance is still open. I ripped out the radio. Then I heard my voice again. In the sound of water trickling from the shower in the air conditioning fan, and later, in other people's dreams, my ex called me in tears, asking if I'd mailed her an old cassette. She said it played my voice, repeating the same line over and over. If you've ever sat in that chair, you no longer carry your own sound. You're the echo looking for a host, *I returned home, but the feeling of returning no longer felt real. Everything was still in its place, but no sound matched my memory. The keyboard made a heavier thud, like striking damp wood. The window no longer creaked. It made a sound like a slowed down recording. And every time I tried to speak, my voice lagged by a few milliseconds, as if another version of me was speaking over my own voice from somewhere very close. I saw an ENT specialist, did a brain scan. All results came back normal. But the doctor said one thing that chilled me. You're not hallucinating sounds, but your temporal lobe is reacting as if it's listening to a recording made in your own voice. I didn't say anything, but he continued. I've seen one other case, a former park ranger who worked near Nevada. He claimed to have left his voice behind in an abandoned observation station. 2 weeks later, he lost the ability to dream. No more REM brain activity at all, as if Something inside him was replaying itself instead of creating new experience. That night, I began recording my voice every evening. I'd turn on the mic, say a few simple lines, my name, the date, how I was feeling. But by the third day, I noticed something strange. Each recording contained phrases I didn't say, mid-sentence. Today is the 7th. My voice, same tone, same rhythm, cuts in. Stay here. No one out there remembers you anymore. Or, I feel like someone, then overlaid by a broadcast-style echo, is adjusting the depth of your voice. I tried reversing one recording. What came out was my voice, clearly saying an address that didn't exist on any map, followed by an appointment time. Room 4, 2:47 a.m. Do not touch the window. I rented a room at an old motel, the exact address from the reversed recording. I arrived at 2:30 a.m., bringing only a voice recorder and a flashlight. The motel owner didn't ask questions. He handed me the key, his eyes clouded, like someone who had once slept too close to strange signals. Room 4 wasn't unusual. Single bed, wooden chair. CRT TV, mirrored wardrobe. I turned on the recorder. Sat in silence. At exactly 2:47. The TV switched on, though it wasn't plugged in. The screen was a pale gray blue, no channels. But the speakers played the sound of me coughing, exactly the way I used to cough when I was a kid. Before. My tonsils were removed. No one ever recorded that. No one ever heard that version of me. But it was me, 12 years old. Coughing in the dark, I ran to switch off the TV. The screen went dark. But in the mirrored wardrobe, I could still see myself. Coughing got since then. I've known I'm no longer an independent entity. I've become a sample of voice, being copied, modified, and replayed across some sublayer of sound waves that normal ears can't perceive. And every time I speak, I send another signal back to that place where sound becomes so concentrated. It can hold shape. An old friend, a sound engineer, called me after years of no contact. He said he picked up a strange signal while testing microphones in the desert. It was your voice, he said. But it wasn't speaking. It was whispering a frequency range below human hearing. I boosted it by 2 octaves, and it became a sentence. I don't want to come back. Began to understand. Site 34 doesn't preserve people. It preserves the auditory intent of people, not words, not screams, but the entire psychological wavelength emitted from a body right before it disappears. These aren't forms, but they can exist. And if a voice is similar enough to the original, the whole self will begin to slide backward toward the signal. Lately, my voice recordings have started to say things I don't understand. Not a foreign language, not code, but a language used only to recall things that never belonged to this world. I've caught myself mouthing words in my sleep. My neighbor said that one night, around 3 a.m., he heard me slowly repeating a passage. Do not leave the chair. Do not leave the sound. Do not leave the third layer. I've never written those lines, but now I don't have to, because every night, the inanimate objects in my room begin playing my voice, reciting old recordings, stitching them into some kind of sonic script I never authored. I've realized I'm not the center of what's happening anymore. I'm just a surface layer, an echo, retained only because it matches the structure too well. And slowly, the original layer beneath is starting to show. It once used my voice. Now I'm just its repetition. I don't dream anymore. I don't reflect in mirrors. I no longer flinch when someone calls my name because I know that name isn't mine anymore.